All right, welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to talk about a word we use all the time without even thinking about it. Object. It seems so simple, right? But when you start to pull at this little thread, you end up unraveling some of the biggest, deepest questions in all of philosophy. To get started, let's just think about all those words we use as, well, as catch-alls. The biggest one, of course, is thing. It's the ultimate label for pretty much anything, from, hey, can you pass me that thing over there, to, that was a really weird thing to say. Or, if we want to get a little more philosophical, we might say being. But really, it's doing the same job, right? It's talking about pretty much anything that exists, like a human being.
And it's the same story with the word entity. It's another one of these big buckets for any kind of distinct existence. Doesn't matter if it's a huge corporation or some kind of cosmic force.
Even something as simple as item, it's just pointing to one thing in a list. So all these words, they seem super straightforward on the surface. But philosophers, they just love to dig deeper. And that's what brings us to their favorite word for all this, object. And believe me, once you start to really pick apart what it means for something to be an object, well, that's when this really fascinating puzzle starts to take shape. So what's the deal here? Is object just a fancy way of saying thing? Or is there a real fundamental difference between them? And that question opens up this huge debate about the very structure of reality itself. Okay, so how do we even begin to solve this puzzle? Well, one major school of thought has a pretty simple all-in-one answer. Philosophers call it the umbrella view. And yeah, the name pretty much gives the whole game away. All right, let's break this down. The idea is actually pretty simple. It's that everything, and I mean absolutely everything that exists, from a planet to a possibility, a person to a prime number, it all fits under one gigantic conceptual umbrella. And that big, all-inclusive category, that's what we're calling object. And this idea, it's not new at all. Just look at this quote from way back in 1903. The philosopher Bertrand Russell cast this incredibly wide net. Now, he uses the word term, but the concept is exactly the same as the umbrella view. A man? Sure, that makes sense. A number? Okay, I can see that. But look at his other examples. A moment in time? A chimera? A mythical creature that doesn't even exist? His point is totally radical. If you can even talk about it, it's an object. End of story. So yeah, this list really drives home just how wild and diverse the stuff under this umbrella is. But it also kind of creates a problem, doesn't it? I mean, is a number really the same kind of thing as a book? Is the idea of redness in the same category as the actual red apple? Asking that question, well, that's what leads us to the whole other side of this debate. So this brings us to the complete alternative. What if object isn't this catch-all term at all? What if it's a really specific category, one that has a distinct opposite? This is the other major camp in philosophy, and they draw a really hard line in the sand. And here's the most common and probably the most intuitive way to draw that line. It's the difference between objects, the things themselves, and properties, which are the ways those things are. So a tree is an object, but its tallness, its greenness, those are its properties. And notice the key difference here. That one specific tree is only in one place, right? But the property of greenness, that can be in a ton of places all at once. On that tree, on your shirt, on a traffic light. See the difference? And of course, philosophers have come up with a bunch of different rules for how to sort reality into these two big buckets. You can see it here. The line can be drawn based on grammar, subjects versus predicates, or even something like perception. You can smell bacon, right? That's the object. But you can't exactly smell hope, the property, and the fact that there's no single universally agreed upon test. Honestly, that's what makes this whole debate so interesting. Okay, so at this point you might be thinking, why does any of this matter? I mean, it's just an abstract debate about words, right? It sounds a lot like splitting hairs, but trust me, it's about something way more fundamental. It matters because how we define our most basic categories is, well, it's how we build our entire understanding of the world. There's this awesome phrase in philosophy for it, carving reality at its joints. Think about that. Are objects and properties a fundamental joint in reality, or is everything just kind of lumped together under one big umbrella? Seriously, how you answer that question shapes your entire map of existence. And that brings this whole thing right back to you. Because what this really shows is that even the simplest, most everyday words can hide these incredibly deep questions about what actually exists. If you decide to ditch that big umbrella view, then you're the one who has to decide what counts as an object and what doesn't. So really think about it. Is a thought an object? What about a story or the concept of justice? Where would you draw the line? Where would you carve reality's joints?